The vastness of the Arizona desert seemed to swallow me from the first moment my feet touched that dry, silent land. Right after coming back from the war in Afghanistan, where I had faced horrors few could imagine, my civilian life fell apart suddenly. My marriage, the anchor that held my hopes together, was lost to betrayal, and my military career crumbled like sand blown by the desert's hot wind. In that small mining village, where time seemed to move more slowly, I wasn't just looking for isolation, but for answers. The simple houses, the faces marked by the sun and years, and the rhythm of life tied to working the land offered more than silence. They revealed stories of struggle, acceptance, and wisdom. There, among dusty roads and endless horizons, I discovered that true peace wasn't in the absence of pain, but in acceptance and rebuilding. This is my story about deep pain, about loss and betrayal, but most importantly, about the unexpected hope that appears in places where no one else dares to look. I always believed life would follow a predictable path, like the endless roads that cross the American countryside. At 45, I was a former soldier with a solid career and a marriage that seemed unbreakable. I lived in a small town in Arizona, a community where everyone knew each other, and I made a living as a trainer at a local gym, helping young people maintain discipline and focus, qualities I developed during my years in the Army. But change came. The signs were clear. The conversations that used to be long and full of hope were replaced by calculated silences and empty looks. I could feel between the lines that something was wrong, but I preferred to believe it was just tiredness or routine. My world, so carefully built, was starting to fall apart, though I still didn't know the exact size of what was coming. At work, the pressure of reintegrating after serving in Afghanistan also weighed on me. War memories kept coming back at the most unexpected moments, and sleep brought no relief. Everything seemed to conspire to make me feel more and more alone, a loneliness that grew even when surrounded by people I knew. Deep down, I sensed I was about to face the biggest challenge of my life, a dark secret and a betrayal that would make me question everything I believed. Arizona, with its dry mountains and wide sky, seemed like a place for fresh starts. But I didn't know yet that my journey there would be much more than an escape. It would be the beginning of rebuilding myself. Before we continue, comment where you're watching from, subscribe to the channel, and hit the like button. It makes a difference so I can keep bringing these stories to you. And so you don't lose the rhythm of the story, what Jake's about to discover, you'll know right now. It all started with a phone. I was in my apartment when my wife Sarah's cell phone rang. I didn't plan to answer, but instinct moved me. The voice on the other end belonged to my best friend, Marcus, a coworker who came to my house almost every week. At that moment, the only clear sentence was an urgent hissing, "I can't wait to sort this out, Sarah. Stay calm." My world collapsed in seconds, but not in immediate rage, in confusion. My first reaction was denial. I stayed still, unable to process what I'd heard. Sarah came home a few hours later, and when she saw me sitting on the couch, my face pale and her phone in my hand, she knew everything had been discovered. The confrontation that followed was silent in its cruelty. I didn't shout, didn't throw things. I simply looked at her with a pain that no words could express. Sarah tried to explain. She said she felt lonely, that Marcus understood her, and that she needed something that I, consumed by the demons of war, couldn't give her. Those words were like stabs. I realized, in that instant, that the war hadn't ended when I left Afghanistan. It had followed me home, invaded my house, destroyed my marriage from the inside out. The betrayal wasn't just about Sarah and Marcus. It was about losing trust, about the illusion of stability I thought I'd built. In the days that followed, I made my arrangements. I sold my share in the gym, quit my job, and with a suitcase and a goodbye letter, I left that town. There was no hate in my actions, just the urgent need to escape. I'd heard about a small mining village in Arizona, a place so remote that even time seemed to forget it. There, among deserts and people who lived off the land, I believed I could find answers. I didn't know exactly what I was looking for, but I knew that the life I'd known had ended. My journey to the village of Copper Ridge took 3 days of driving. I crossed desert plains, passed through small towns that seemed frozen in time, until I finally reached a place that seemed forgotten by the rest of the world. Copper Ridge was a cluster of simple houses. The first house I found to rent was a small, isolated cabin. It had a wooden porch and a simple bedroom. Through the window, I could only see the endless desert. In the first days, the silence choked me, because the sounds of war still echoed in my mind. But gradually, the desert started to speak in a different way. I started a routine. I'd wake up early and walk through the desert slopes. I found work helping an old miner named Frank on his property, fixing fences and taking care of some horses. Frank was a man of few words. Among the horses, I found a spotted colt I called Cisco, who became my constant companion. I'd take the animal during my walks, and in those silent moments, I felt something I'd lost, a sense of simple, honest purpose. The years passed. 1 became 2, 2 became 5. My beard grew thick, my hands wrinkled from working under the desert sun, and my body adapted to the slow rhythm of rural life. I quietly integrated into the Copper Ridge community. I'd invested most of the money from selling my share of the gym in a local bank account, accessible to me, but which I knew left a small financial trail. But even after 5 years in that isolated desert, I still held on to a doubt. One night, while talking with Frank around the campfire, he mentioned he'd received an unusual phone call asking if he knew a veteran with my name. 5 months after that conversation, I was fixing the north fence on Frank's property when I saw an old pickup truck coming up the dusty road. A man got out of the vehicle. It was Marcus. Time had left deep marks on his face. I felt my blood boil, ready to explode, but something in Marcus's expression made me stop. He raised his hands in a gesture of peace and started talking without being invited. "I deserve this," he said, referring to the hate he saw in my eyes. "But I need to tell you the truth. Sarah, she wasn't having an affair with me because she loved me. She was protecting us. Your old superior, a colonel named Hartley, was blackmailing her. He had proof of an unauthorized action you took in Afghanistan, something that could have gotten you court-martialed and sent to prison. He wanted a huge amount of money. Sarah couldn't risk you finding out and confronting Hartley in your fragile state." Marcus continued. "Sarah came to me. I helped her fake an affair with me. The lie was the only excuse she had to immediately cut contact and focus on getting the money to deal with Hartley without you getting involved. She always planned to tell you the truth, but when you ran away, she couldn't track you down. The only trace you left was the investment of the gym money. She asked me to trace it through land funds in Arizona. It took me years, but I finally found the trail to Frank. The revelation hit me like a storm. Everything I'd believed about my betrayal was turned upside down. Sarah had sacrificed herself to protect me. I'd spent 5 years running away. Marcus told me how Sarah had finally gotten rid of Hartley. "Why did you come here? Why now?" I asked, my voice barely coming out. "Because Sarah found out you were here 3 months ago. She's sick, Jake. Cancer. The doctors say she has a few months. She doesn't want to die without you knowing the truth." Marcus handed me an envelope with an address and a letter in Sarah's familiar handwriting. In that moment, Everything I'd built, the peace in the desert, the protective isolation, the anger I'd nurtured as a shield, collapsed. The desert had healed me, but now it was calling me to go back. I sat on the porch of my cabin, with Sarah's letter in my shaking hands. I read every word, every confession, every expression of love. Sarah wrote about how she'd tried to protect me, and how the forgiveness I needed to give was actually for myself, to let go of the anger that had taken me to the desert. The decision wasn't hard. The next morning, I packed my few belongings and left a letter for Frank. I traveled for 2 days to the small house where Sarah lived. When the door opened, I saw her face, thinner, more fragile, but with the same eyes I'd loved. I simply hugged her, and we both cried. Those last months with Sarah were the opposite of everything I'd lived in the desert. I took care of her and was simply present, something I'd learned in rural isolation, that presence is an act of love. Sarah, in turn, forgave me with every look because she understood that my anger had only been a twisted form of wounded love. When Sarah died 3 months later, I wasn't alone. Marcus was there, Frank had traveled to be there. At the ceremony, I spoke about how forgiveness isn't weakness, but the strength needed to transform pain into compassion. After Sarah's death, I returned to Copper Ridge, but changed. I wasn't running anymore. I was coming back. With the money Sarah had left me, I bought a small property near Copper Ridge. I built a house where I could live peacefully, but also open to the community. I started working as a volunteer with other veterans who came to the region. Cisco, my horse, stayed by my side. I'd learned that sometimes the betrayal that breaks us is just the twisted path to finding out who we really are. As Jake watches the red Arizona sunset, with Cisco by his side, and the wind whispering through the mountains that saved him, I need you here with me. If you like this story, this is the moment to show that you believe in redemption stories. Subscribe to the channel. Each subscription is a vote of confidence in stories that matter, narratives that show that even when everything falls apart, there's still beauty and transformation waiting for us. Hit the like button, because you know that stories like this need to reach more people. And in the comments, tell me, where are you watching this redemption story from? Which part of Jake did you see yourself in? What desert did you need to cross to find peace? Your answer is part of this story, because stories like this only truly come to life when they resonate in real hearts. Now let's see where Jake was always meant to be. 15 years have passed since I first arrived at Copper Ridge. Today, I'm 60 years old, and my hands carry the scars of honest work and the years I spent under the desert sun. My property has transformed into a small refuge for veterans who arrive wounded, just like I arrived one day. It's just the home of a man who learned that healing means helping others find their own way. Frank died a few years ago, leaving me his knowledge about the land. Cisco remains by my side, aged but still strong. Marcus became a true friend, visiting Copper Ridge regularly. The lesson I learned in the desert, and that I now share with everyone who arrives, is simple but deep. Betrayal breaks us, but it doesn't define us. Isolation can be necessary to rebuild, but true peace comes when we're willing to connect with others again. Forgiveness isn't weakness. It's the strength to recognize that we're all human, flawed, and worthy of second chances. Every sunset in Arizona, I sit on the porch of my house with a cup of coffee, watching the red mountains that saved me. I think about Sarah, Marcus, Frank, and all the veterans who found peace there. And I understand that the war I fought wasn't just in Afghanistan. It was inside me, and it was the desert that taught me to be a soldier of my own healing. My life isn't perfect, but it's real. It's authentic. It's redemption.